You're fired for poor performance. CEO Luka Petrov shouted, his face red with rage, as he pointed his finger at me across the conference table. What he didn't know was that I'd accidentally left my screen sharing on from our board presentation, and every word was being broadcast live to the directors. As he continued his tirade about my incompetence, a deep voice suddenly boomed from the conference speaker. Actually, Luka, you are fired. Chairman William Hartford walked through the door, his expression stern. She just saved us from financial disaster. You almost cost us everything. My name is Danette Cross, and 6 months ago I thought I understood how corporate loyalty worked. I'd spent 8 years building data flow technologies from a struggling software startup into a company worth $50 million, believing that dedication and results would speak for themselves. I joined Dataflow in 2016 when the company consisted of 12 employees crammed into a converted warehouse space in Austin, Texas. The air conditioning barely worked, the coffee machine leaked, and our biggest client was a local accounting firm that paid us $3,000 monthly for basic data processing services. Luka Petrov had founded Dataflow after dropping out of his computer science PhD program at University of Texas. He possessed brilliant technical vision, but lacked the business acumen to transform innovative ideas into sustainable revenue streams. His attempts at client presentations often devolved into incomprehensible technical jargon that left potential customers confused rather than impressed. During my interview, Luka explained his dream of revolutionizing how small businesses manage their digital information. Most companies are drowning in data but starving for insights, he said, his eyes lighting up with genuine passion. We can build systems that turn overwhelming information into actionable business intelligence. His enthusiasm was infectious, but I could see the gaps in his approach. Dataflow had developed sophisticated data analysis tools, but they'd never successfully explained their value to non-technical decision makers. That's where my background in business development and client relations became crucial. My first major contribution came during month 3 when Luka mentioned losing a potential client because they couldn't understand how our software would solve their specific problems. Austin Regional Hospital had expressed interest in our patient data analytics platform, but our presentation had focused entirely on technical capabilities rather than practical applications. I requested a second meeting with hospital administrators, spending 2 weeks learning about their operational challenges, regulatory requirements, and daily workflow frustrations. Instead of showcasing our software's technical features, I demonstrated how our tools could reduce patient wait times, improve billing accuracy, and help doctors access critical information faster. Austin Regional became our first major healthcare client, signing a 2-year contract worth $120,000 annually. More importantly, their success story provided the credibility we needed to pursue similar organizations throughout Texas and beyond. Over the following years, I developed Dataflow's entire business development strategy, while Luka and his engineering team focused on product innovation. I built the client acquisition processes that transformed brilliant software into profitable revenue streams. I personally closed contracts with 17 major clients, including 3 hospital networks, 2 university systems, and several large professional services firms. By 2020, Dataflow employed 83 people across 4 office locations. Our annual revenue had grown to $12 million, and industry publications were recognizing us as one of the fastest-growing data analytics companies in the Southwest. Luka often credited our success to his technical leadership, while I preferred working behind the scenes to ensure our clients received exceptional service and support. The backend monitoring system became my specialty area during year 5. As Dataflow's client base expanded, we needed sophisticated tools to track system performance. identify potential problems before they affected customers, and maintain the reliability that distinguished us from competitors with flashier marketing but less dependable service. I worked closely with our development team to design monitoring dashboards that provided real-time insights into every aspect of our software performance. These systems tracked server response times, database query efficiency, user activity patterns, and potential security vulnerabilities across all client installations. More importantly, I developed protocols for proactive client communication whenever our monitoring detected issues that might impact their operations. Instead of waiting for clients to call with complaints, we contacted them first to explain any temporary slowdowns, schedule maintenance during their off hours, and ensure minimal disruption to their daily workflows. This approach earned Dataflow a client retention rate above 95%, significantly higher than industry averages. Clients trusted us because we demonstrated consistent reliability and transparent communication about both our successes and our challenges. The monitoring system also provided invaluable business intelligence about client usage patterns, feature preferences, and areas where additional training or customization might improve their satisfaction. I used this data to develop targeted expansion strategies that helped existing clients maximize their investment while identifying opportunities for additional services. By early 2024, my client development efforts had generated over $30 million in cumulative revenue for Dataflow. The backend systems I'd helped design were processing millions of data points daily for clients across 12 states, and our reputation for reliability had become our strongest competitive advantage. But success created new challenges that tested the collaborative culture Luka and I had built together. As Dataflow grew larger and attracted attention from potential investors, the dynamics within our leadership team began shifting in ways that made me increasingly uncomfortable. The trouble began when Dataflow attracted serious acquisition interest from TechCorp Industries, a massive conglomerate known for purchasing innovative smaller companies and integrating them into their corporate portfolio. TechCorp's initial offer valued Dataflow at $45 million, representing life-changing wealth for Luka and significant financial rewards for early employees like myself. During preliminary negotiations, I noticed changes in Luka's behavior that concerned me. The collaborative decision-making process we'd developed over 8 years gradually gave way to increasingly autocratic management as he began viewing himself as a tech industry visionary rather than a startup founder who'd succeeded through teamwork and persistence. Dan at TechCorp is impressed by our technical capabilities, but they have concerns about our business operations, Luka explained during a private meeting in March. They think we might benefit from more systematic management approaches. TechCorp's feedback suggested that Dataflow's client-focused culture was inefficient compared to standardized corporate processes used by their other subsidiaries. They wanted us to transition away from personalized client relationships towards scalable service delivery models that could be easily replicated across different markets. This philosophy directly contradicted everything that had made Dataflow successful. Our clients valued the personal attention and customized solutions that distinguished us from larger competitors with generic software offerings and impersonal customer service. Luka seemed increasingly seduced by TechCorp's vision of transforming Dataflow into a major industry player. He began implementing changes designed to impress potential acquirers rather than serve our existing clients' needs. The first casualty was our collaborative management structure. We need clearer lines of authority and more professional corporate governance, Luka announced during an April staff meeting. As we grow larger, informal decision-making processes become inefficient and confusing for potential partners. He hired external consultants to evaluate our organizational structure and recommend improvements. These consultants who'd never worked in our industry or understood our client relationships produced a report suggesting that data flow eliminate redundant middle management positions and streamline operational hierarchies. I found myself caught in the middle of this transformation. Technically, I held the title of Business Development Director, but my actual role encompassed client relations, strategic planning system monitoring, and cross-departmental coordination. The consultants couldn't easily categorize my contributions within their standardized corporate framework. More troubling was Luka's growing willingness to accept TechCorp's criticism of our business practices without defending the approaches that had generated our success. During acquisition discussions, TechCorp executives questioned whether Dataflow's high client retention rates actually indicated inefficient resource allocation rather than superior service quality. Maybe we're investing too much effort in maintaining existing relationships instead of focusing on rapid customer acquisition, Luka mused after one particularly intense negotiation session. TechCorp's model emphasizes scalable growth over individualized attention. I tried explaining that our client retention was precisely what made data flow valuable to acquirers. Companies that prioritized rapid acquisition over relationship building often experienced high customer turnover that undermined long-term profitability. Our stable client base provided predictable revenue streams that supported sustainable growth, but Luka seemed increasingly convinced that TechCorp's corporate expertise trumped our practical experience. He began questioning decisions we'd made together, second-guessing strategies that had proven successful, and implementing changes designed to align data flow with TechCorp's operational preferences. The most significant change involved our client monitoring systems. TechCorp's technical team reviewed our backend infrastructure and suggested that our proactive monitoring approach was unnecessarily expensive and potentially counterproductive. Constant monitoring creates paranoia about minor issues that don't actually impact client satisfaction, their report concluded. Resources devoted to preemptive problem solving could be better allocated to new feature development and market expansion. This assessment revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of our business model. Our monitoring systems didn't create paranoia. They prevented small issues from becoming major problems that could destroy client relationships and damage our reputation. The minor issues that TechCorp dismissed had the potential to cascade into system-wide failures that could cost us multiple clients simultaneously. When I tried explaining these concerns to Luka, he dismissed them as resistance to necessary modernization. Danette, we can't let attachment to our current methods prevent us from embracing more efficient approaches. TechCorp has successfully managed dozens of companies like ours, but TechCorp hadn't managed companies like ours. Their portfolio consisted primarily of larger, more established firms that competed on price and features rather than reliability and relationships. Their efficient approaches worked for businesses that could afford to lose individual clients because they maintained large enough customer bases to absorb turnover. Dataflow's success depended on maintaining deep, long-term relationships with clients who trusted us with their most critical business data. Losing even one major client could significantly impact our revenue and reputation within our specialized market niche. As negotiations with TechCorp intensified throughout the summer, I watched Luka systematically abandon the principles and practices that had built Dataflow's success. He was so focused on impressing potential acquirers that he lost sight of what made our company worth acquiring in the first place. The breaking point came during a September board meeting when Luka announced his intention to accept TechCorp's revised offer of $52 million. The deal included commitments to retain all current employees for at least 18 months. But I noticed concerning language about operational restructuring and management optimization that suggested significant changes ahead. After the meeting, I requested a private conversation with Luka to discuss my concerns about the acquisition's potential impact on our client relationships and company culture. Luka, I'm worried that TechCorp doesn't understand what makes data flow successful. I began carefully. Their suggestions about reducing client monitoring and standardizing our service delivery could damage the relationships we've spent years building. Luka's response revealed how much his perspective had changed. Danette, you need to think bigger. Our current approach might work for a 50-person company, but it won't scale to the size TechCorp envisions for us. Sometimes growth requires letting go of comfortable but limiting practices. Comfortable but limiting practices. He was describing the client-focused philosophy and proactive service approach that had generated over $30 million in revenue and established Dataflow as a trusted partner for organizations throughout the region. That conversation made me realize that Luka no longer saw me as a strategic partner who'd contributed to building our success. Instead, I'd become an obstacle to the corporate transformation he believed necessary for Dataflow's continued growth. The acquisition closed in early October, and TechCorp's integration team arrived within days to begin optimizing Dataflow's operational efficiency. Their first priority involved conducting comprehensive performance reviews for all employees to identify areas where workforce rationalization might improve profitability. Sarah Chen, TechCorp's integration director, established temporary offices in our Austin headquarters and immediately began scheduling individual meetings with department heads. Sarah possessed an MBA from Wharton and 5 years of experience managing corporate acquisitions, but she'd never worked in data analytics or understood the technical complexities of our industry. We're excited to help Dataflow reach its full potential, Sarah explained during the company-wide introduction meeting. Our analysis suggests significant opportunities for growth through strategic workforce optimization and operational streamlining. Her language was carefully neutral, but experienced employees recognized the euphemisms. Workforce optimization meant layoffs. Operational streamlining meant eliminating departments or functions that TechCorp considered redundant or inefficient. The first casualty was Monica Rodriguez, our client success manager, who'd worked at Dataflow for 6 years. Monica had developed deep relationships with our healthcare clients, understanding their unique regulatory requirements and helping them maximize their use of our analytics tools. Monica's role appears to overlap significantly with standard customer service functions. Sarah explained to Luka during a meeting I accidentally overheard. TechCorp's centralized support model can handle client inquiries more efficiently than dedicated account management. Luka raised weak objections about Monica's specialized knowledge and client relationships, but he ultimately agreed to eliminate her position. Monica learned about her termination during a brief Friday afternoon meeting, where Sarah explained that her responsibilities would be transitioned to our corporate support team. Monica's clients noticed the change immediately. Instead of working with someone who understood their specific needs and challenges, they now contacted a generic help desk staffed by representatives who read from scripts and escalated complex issues to technical teams with no healthcare industry experience. Within 2 weeks, Austin Regional Hospital submitted a formal complaint about declining service quality. Dr. Patricia Williams, their chief information officer, called me personally to express frustration with the new support model. Damn it! We used to get immediate assistance from Monica whenever we had questions about data integration or reporting customization, Dr. Williams explained. Now we wait on hold for 20 minutes to reach someone who doesn't understand our workflows or regulatory requirements. I documented these complaints and shared them with Luka, hoping he'd recognize that TechCorp's efficiency improvements were actually damaging our most valuable client relationships. Instead, he defended the changes as necessary growing pains. Monica was becoming too comfortable in her role, Luka told me dismissively. Our clients need to adapt to more professional support structures rather than relying on personal relationships. Personal relationships. Monica's expertise had saved Austin Regional Hospital thousands of hours of implementation time and helped them avoid regulatory compliance issues that could have resulted in significant financial penalties. Her comfort in her role reflected deep knowledge and proven competence, not complacency. The next target was David Kim, our senior systems administrator, who designed much of the back-end monitoring infrastructure that ensured reliable service for all our clients. David had started as an intern during year 2 and grown into one of our most valuable technical employees through dedication and continuous learning. TechCorp's technical review concluded that David's monitoring systems were over-engineered and created unnecessary complexity that hindered efficient maintenance. They preferred standardized monitoring tools used across all their subsidiaries, despite the fact that these tools lacked the customization necessary for our specialized applications. We're transitioning to enterprise-grade monitoring solutions that provide better scalability and integration with our corporate infrastructure, Sarah announced during David's termination meeting. David tried explaining that our custom monitoring systems tracked specific performance metrics crucial for maintaining client satisfaction. The standardized tools TechCorp preferred might work for generic software applications, but they couldn't provide the detailed insights necessary for managing complex data analytics workflows. Sarah dismissed his concerns as resistance to change. David, we appreciate your contributions, but we need team members who can embrace corporate standard tools rather than defending legacy systems. Legacy systems. David's monitoring infrastructure was less than 3 years old and incorporated cutting-edge technologies specifically chosen for their reliability and performance capabilities. The enterprise-grade solutions TechCorp preferred were actually older, more generic tools that traded customization for supposed ease of management. Losing David created immediate operational problems that became apparent during the following weeks. The standardized monitoring tools failed to detect several minor issues that David's systems would have flagged automatically. These problems compounded until they caused temporary service disruptions for 2 major clients. I spent hours on emergency calls with frustrated customers explaining technical problems that could have been prevented with proper monitoring. The irony was devastating. TechCorp's efficiency improvements were creating exactly the kind of reliability issues that had driven clients to choose Dataflow over larger, less attentive competitors. But the most devastating termination came in late November when TechCorp eliminated Janet Foster, our Director of Quality Assurance. Janet had developed comprehensive testing protocols that ensured every software update and customization met our strict reliability standards before deployment to client systems. TechCorp's assessment concluded that Dataflow's quality assurance processes were unnecessarily rigorous and slowed product development cycles compared to industry standards. They preferred faster release schedules that prioritized new features over exhaustive testing. Our development methodology emphasizes rapid iteration and responsive customer feedback, rather than lengthy pre-release validation, Sarah explained during Janet's exit meeting. Modern software development practices rely on continuous deployment and real-time issue resolution. Janet's 22 years of software quality experience had taught her that rapid deployment without rigorous testing inevitably led to customer-facing bugs that damaged user confidence and required expensive emergency fixes. Her unnecessarily rigorous processes had maintained Dataflow's reputation for reliability, while our competitors struggled with frequent service disruptions and client complaints. Sarah, our clients choose us specifically because our software works consistently, Janet explained during her final meeting. They can't afford downtime or data corruption issues. That's why we test everything thoroughly before release. Sarah's response revealed TechCorp's fundamental misunderstanding of our market position. Janet, our research shows that customers prefer frequent feature updates over prolonged development cycles. We need to match competitor release schedules to remain competitive. But our clients didn't want frequent feature updates. They wanted stable, reliable software that processed their critical business data without interruption. The healthcare organizations, universities, and professional service firms we served valued consistency over novelty, understanding that untested features could create catastrophic problems for their operations. As I watched these experienced, knowledgeable employees pack their belongings and say goodbye to careers they'd spent years building at Dataflow, I began recognizing a disturbing pattern. TechCorp wasn't eliminating inefficient employees or outdated processes. They were systematically removing the expertise and institutional knowledge that had made Dataflow successful, replacing proven approaches with generic corporate practices that might work for other companies but ignored our unique market position and client needs. Most concerning was Luka's apparent acceptance of these changes. Instead of defending the team members who'd helped build Dataflow's success, he seemed relieved to transfer difficult decisions to TechCorp's integration specialists. The collaborative leader who'd once valued diverse perspectives and encouraged open discussion had become an echo chamber for corporate consultants who'd never managed client relationships or understood our industry's technical requirements. I realized then that my own position was probably next on TechCorp's optimization list. My role encompassed too many different functions to fit neatly into their standardized organizational structure, and my close relationships with clients represented exactly the kind of inefficient personal connections they wanted to eliminate. The only question was whether I'd be eliminated quietly like the others, or whether Luka would find some way to make my departure look like a performance issue rather than a strategic restructuring decision. December 15th arrived gray and cold for Austin, with an unusual winter storm system moving through central Texas. I should have recognized it as a harbinger of the professional storm about to engulf my career at Dataflow. Luka had scheduled an emergency board meeting for that Tuesday morning, ostensibly to discuss fourth quarter performance and address some operational challenges that had emerged during TechCorp's integration process. The meeting invitation included all 5 board members, plus Sarah Chen from TechCorp's integration team. I'd been preparing for this presentation for weeks, compiling comprehensive data about client satisfaction, system performance metrics, and revenue projections for the following year. Despite the disruptions caused by recent staff eliminations, our core business remained strong with client retention above 92% and several major contract renewals scheduled for early 2025. The boardroom setup felt unusually formal compared to our typically collaborative meetings. Luka sat at the head of the conference table with Sarah Chen positioned to his right, and the 5 board members arranged along both sides. I took my usual seat near the presentation screen laptop, ready to share performance data and client feedback summaries. Before we begin Danette's operational report, Luka announced, I want to address some concerning trends that Sarah's team has identified during their integration analysis. My stomach dropped. This wasn't going to be a routine performance review. Luka's tone was cold and formal, completely different from our normal collaborative discussions. Sarah opened her laptop and began projecting slides titled Dataflow Operational Assessment Areas of Concern. The presentation was clearly designed to build a case against me personally rather than provide objective analysis of company performance. Our investigation has identified significant inefficiencies in current client management processes. Sarah began, her voice crisp and professional. Specifically, we've documented instances where outdated relationship-based approaches have hindered adoption of more systematic service delivery methods. Relationship-based approaches. She was describing the client-focused philosophy that had generated over $30 million in revenue and established Dataflow's reputation for exceptional service quality. Additionally, Sarah continued, we've observed resistance to necessary organizational changes that could improve operational efficiency and align Dataflow with industry best practices. The slides included charts and graphs that portrayed my client communication as excessive, my involvement in technical decisions as boundary overreach, and my advocacy for maintaining monitoring systems as resistance to corporate standardization. Every data point was technically accurate, but presented without context that would explain why these activities had been crucial for Dataflow's success. My excessive client communication had prevented numerous service disruptions and maintained satisfaction levels above 95%. My boundary overreach in technical decisions had ensured that our software deployments met client requirements rather than generic specifications. My resistance to standardization had protected monitoring capabilities that were essential for maintaining our reliability advantage over competitors. Board member William Hartford looked increasingly uncomfortable as Sarah presented her conclusions. Bill had invested in Dataflow during year 3 and served as our unofficial advisor throughout our growth period. He understood our business model well enough to recognize that Sarah's improvements were actually destroying our competitive advantages. Sarah, these relationship-based approaches you're criticizing have been fundamental to Dataflow's client retention and revenue growth. Bill interjected during a pause in the presentation. Are you suggesting that maintaining strong client relationships is inefficient? Sarah's response revealed the depth of TechCorp's misunderstanding. Mr. Hartford, our analysis shows that excessive focus on individual client relationships creates scalability limitations and resource allocation inefficiencies. Modern service delivery models emphasize systematic processes that can be replicated across large customer bases, but Dataflow had never been about large customer bases. Our success came from providing specialized solutions to organizations with complex data analytics needs that required customized approaches and personal attention. We weren't competing on volume. We were competing on quality and reliability. Luka chose that moment to deliver his devastating conclusion. The board needs to understand that Danette's management style and approach to client relations are fundamentally incompatible with our growth objectives. Her resistance to necessary changes is becoming a significant obstacle to successful integration with TechCorp. The conference room fell silent. Luka was publicly blaming me for integration problems that had actually resulted from TechCorp's systematic elimination of the expertise and processes that made Dataflow valuable. But I'd made one crucial mistake that morning. In my rush to prepare comprehensive performance data for the presentation, I'd forgotten to properly close my screen sharing session from the previous day's technical review with our development team. My laptop was still connected to the conference room's audio-visual system, broadcasting everything to the main display screen. More importantly, I'd left open my backend monitoring dashboard, which provided real-time access to every aspect of Dataflow's technical infrastructure, including detailed logs of all system activities, client usage patterns, and performance metrics from the past 6 months. As Luka continued his criticism of my outdated methods and resistance to corporate integration, I absently clicked through different monitoring screens to check current system status. This was a nervous habit I'd developed during stressful meetings, but I had no idea that my actions were being projected live to everyone in the room. Danette's insistence on maintaining redundant monitoring systems exemplifies the kind of inefficient resource allocation that TechCorp's integration is designed to eliminate, Luka declared, gesturing toward what he assumed was Sarah's presentation slide. Instead, the main screen displayed my monitoring dashboard showing real-time data about a critical system issue that was developing at that very moment. Austin Regional Hospital's data processing workflows were experiencing performance degradation that could escalate into a complete service failure within the next hour. The dashboard clearly showed that this problem stemmed directly from TechCorp's recent optimization of our server infrastructure. Their standardized configuration had eliminated redundant backup systems that David Kim had implemented to prevent exactly this type of cascading failure. Board member Jennifer Walsh pointed at the screen with obvious concern. "Luka, what is that data showing? Is there a current problem with Austin Regional's system?" Luka glanced at the screen and realized with horror that my monitoring dashboard was visible instead of Sarah's presentation. His face went pale as he recognized that the board was seeing real-time evidence of service problems he'd been unaware of or chosen to ignore. "That's just routine monitoring data," he said quickly, trying to regain control of the situation. "Nothing that requires immediate attention." But the monitoring data told a very different story. The performance graphs showed clearly that Austin Regional Hospital's system was experiencing critical slowdowns that would prevent their medical staff from accessing patient records within 30 minutes unless immediate action was taken. I realized then that this was my moment of truth. Luka was willing to dismiss a potential client emergency in order to continue his performance review designed to justify my termination. He was more concerned with impressing TechCorp's integration team than with maintaining the service reliability that had built Dataflow's reputation. "Actually, Luka," I said calmly, "this is showing a critical issue that needs immediate attention. Austin Regional's system is about to fail completely unless we restart their backup processing servers." Luka's expression hardened. "Danette, we're in the middle of an important board discussion. Technical issues can wait. Technical issues can wait." We were potentially 30 minutes away from a complete service failure for one of our most important healthcare clients, and Luka thought it could wait because addressing it would interrupt his planned criticism of my performance. That was the moment I understood that Luka had fundamentally changed. The collaborative leader who'd once prioritized client needs above all else had become a corporate executive more concerned with internal politics than external responsibilities. "Luka, I need to address this immediately." I insisted, turning to my laptop to begin emergency protocols. "You're fired!" He suddenly exploded, his composure completely shattered. "This is exactly the kind of insubordination and poor prioritization that makes you unsuitable for your position. You're terminated effective immediately." The conference room erupted in shocked silence. Luka had just fired me during a live board meeting while our monitoring system showed an imminent crisis that required immediate technical intervention. But what Luka didn't realize was that his outburst was being broadcast far beyond the conference room where we sat. Known to everyone present, my laptop's audio feed was connected not just to the conference room's display system, but also to a remote video link that board chairman William Hartford had established for directors who couldn't attend in person. 2 board members were participating virtually, listening to our meeting through their computers while reviewing quarterly financial reports. Additionally, our IT department had recently implemented new security protocols that automatically recorded all meetings involving access to backend monitoring systems. Every word of Luka's termination outburst was being captured in multiple digital formats that would be accessible to TechCorp's corporate compliance team. But the most immediate consequence of my still active screen sharing was that Austin Regional Hospital's IT staff could also see our monitoring dashboard. I'd forgotten that we'd granted them read-only access to their system status displays as part of our transparent service approach. Dr. Patricia Williams and her technical team were watching in real time as their critical patient data systems approached complete failure. The irony was devastating. While Luka was firing me for supposedly prioritizing technical issues over business meetings, our most important client was witnessing a medical emergency being ignored for the sake of corporate politics. My phone buzzed with an urgent text message from Dr. Williams. "Danette, we can see the system alerts on your dashboard. Our evening shift starts in 20 minutes and we need patient record access. Is anyone addressing this crisis?" I showed the message to the board members, but Luka waved dismissively. "Danette, you're terminated. You no longer have authority to make technical decisions for this company." The monitoring dashboard continued displaying increasingly critical alerts as Austin Regional's system performance deteriorated rapidly. Database query response times had increased by 300% in the past 10 minutes, and predictive models showed complete system failure within 15 minutes unless immediate action was taken. Board member Jennifer Walsh looked increasingly alarmed as she watched the real-time data. "Luka, regardless of personnel issues, shouldn't we address this emergency before it affects patient care?" Luka's response revealed how completely he'd lost sight of Dataflow's core mission. "Jennifer, we can't allow individual client problems to disrupt important strategic discussions. Our technical team can handle routine issues after this meeting concludes." Routine issues. The potential collapse of a major hospital's patient data system during evening shift change was routine. Luka was willing to risk patient safety to continue a board meeting designed to justify firing the person who'd built the client relationships and monitoring systems that made data flow valuable. William Hartford stood up abruptly. "Luka, I need to make an urgent phone call. Please continue with your presentation." Bill stepped out of the conference room, but his voice was audible through the partially open door as he dialed TechCorp's corporate headquarters. "Richard, this is Bill Hartford from the Dataflow board. We have an emergency situation that requires immediate executive intervention." Richard Morrison, TechCorp's CEO, apparently answered immediately. Bill's side of the conversation was clearly audible to everyone remaining in the conference room. "Richard, we're in a board meeting where the CEO just fired his director of client relations, while a major healthcare client system is failing in real time. The fired employee is the only person who knows how to fix the crisis, but the CEO is preventing her from taking action." Sarah Chen went pale as she realized that TechCorp's senior leadership was being informed about Luka's spectacularly poor judgment during a client emergency. The integration process she'd been managing was about to become a corporate crisis that could damage TechCorp's reputation and expose them to significant legal liability. Richard Morrison's response was apparently immediate and decisive. Bill returned to the conference room with his phone on speaker, allowing everyone to hear TechCorp's CEO directly. "Luka, this is Richard Morrison. I understand you've terminated an employee during an active client emergency. Is that assessment accurate?" Luka stammered, realizing that his actions were now being reviewed by the ultimate authority in Dataflow's corporate hierarchy. "Richard, we were conducting a necessary performance review that identified serious concerns about operational efficiency. Luka, I'm looking at real-time data from your monitoring systems through our corporate dashboard access. Austin Regional Hospital's infrastructure is approaching critical failure, and you've just fired the person responsible for preventing these emergencies. Explain your decision-making process." The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Luka had no reasonable explanation for prioritizing internal politics over client service during a medical emergency. His entire termination case against me was based on criticizing the proactive monitoring and client relationship management that was currently proving essential for preventing a healthcare crisis. "Richard, the integration team identified inefficiencies in our client management processes that needed to be addressed," Luka replied weakly. "Luka, those inefficiencies are currently the only thing preventing a medical emergency at one of our major clients. I'm looking at system performance data that shows this crisis was predictable and preventable using the monitoring tools you apparently want to eliminate." The monitoring dashboard continued broadcasting evidence of Luka's failed leadership to everyone present. The server performance problems that were threatening Austin Regional's operations had developed gradually over several days, but TechCorp's optimized infrastructure lacked the redundancy and monitoring capabilities necessary to detect and prevent the emerging crisis. Richard Morrison's voice carried unmistakable authority as he delivered his verdict. Luka, effective immediately, you are relieved of your position as CEO of Dataflow Technologies. Sarah, you will escort Luka from the premises and ensure he has no further access to company systems or client data. The conference room erupted in stunned silence. In less than 5 minutes, the entire power structure of Dataflow had been revolutionized. Luka, who'd spent the morning trying to fire me for performance issues, had just been terminated himself for catastrophically poor judgment during a client emergency. But Richard Morrison wasn't finished. His voice crackled through the speaker with decisive clarity. Danette, I understand you've been terminated, but TechCorp is immediately reinstating you with full authority to address the current crisis. Please take whatever action is necessary to prevent service failure for Austin Regional Hospital. I looked around the conference room at the shocked faces of board members, the panicked expression of Sarah Chen, and the devastated comprehension dawning in Luka's eyes. In one moment, I'd gone from terminated employee to the person responsible for managing Dataflow's most critical client emergency. Thank you, Mr. Morrison, I replied professionally. I'll begin emergency protocols immediately. As I turned back to my laptop to implement the server restart procedures that would prevent Austin Regional's system failure, I heard William Hartford speaking quietly into his phone. Richard, I think we also need to discuss immediate leadership transition plans. Dataflow is going to need new executive management. The monitoring dashboard showed system performance beginning to stabilize as emergency backup servers came online. Austin Regional Hospital's patient data systems would continue operating normally, but the crisis had revealed fundamental flaws in TechCorp's integration approach that would require comprehensive reevaluation. Luka sat motionless in his chair, apparently unable to process the complete reversal of his circumstances. 20 minutes earlier, he'd been confidently firing me for performance issues. Now he was unemployed while I worked to prevent the client emergency he'd ignored. Over the following hour, as I worked to stabilize Austin Regional Hospital's systems and coordinate with their IT staff, the full magnitude of TechCorp's integration failures became apparent to everyone in the conference room. The monitoring dashboard that had accidentally remained active provided a comprehensive real-time audit of every decision Luka and Sarah Chen had made during the previous 3 months. The data was devastating. Client satisfaction scores had dropped by 37% since TechCorp's integration began. System reliability metrics showed increasing frequency of performance issues that correlated directly with elimination of monitoring capabilities and reduction of proactive maintenance protocols. Most damning was evidence that several client complaints had been categorized as routine service requests and never escalated to senior management for resolution. William Hartford studied the performance trends with obvious concern. Danette, these reliability problems appear to have started when your monitoring systems were downgraded. Is that assessment accurate? I pulled up comparative data from the 6 months before and after TechCorp's integration. Yes, Mr. Hartford. The standardized monitoring tools don't track the specific performance indicators that are crucial for our specialized applications. We've lost early warning capabilities that previously allowed us to prevent problems before they affected client operations. Board member Jennifer Walsh asked the critical question, how many other clients are currently at risk for similar failures? I ran diagnostic scans across our entire client base, and the results were sobering. 7 clients showed performance indicators suggesting potential system issues within the next week. 3 more displayed patterns that indicated emerging problems that could escalate into service disruptions within the next month. All of these potential problems would have been detected and resolved proactively under our previous monitoring protocols, I explained. The standardized tools simply don't provide the granular data necessary for predictive maintenance. Sarah Chen attempted to defend TechCorp's integration decisions. Our corporate monitoring standards have been successfully implemented across 43 other acquisitions without these complications. William Hartford's response was sharp and immediate. Sarah, how many of those 43 companies specialized in healthcare data analytics with zero-tolerance reliability requirements? Sarah's silence provided the answer. TechCorp's standardized approaches might work for general business software, but they were completely inadequate for the mission-critical applications that Dataflow's clients depended upon for daily operations. Richard Morrison's voice crackled through the conference speaker as he rejoined the discussion from TechCorp's corporate headquarters. Sarah, I've been reviewing integration reports from our due diligence team. Did anyone identify that Dataflow's client base includes healthcare organizations with regulatory compliance requirements? Another damning silence. TechCorp's acquisition team had focused entirely on financial metrics and technical capabilities without understanding the regulatory environment and reliability expectations that govern Dataflow's market niche. Mr. Morrison, I interjected, healthcare clients choose Dataflow specifically because our monitoring and quality assurance processes exceed industry standards for reliability. They're willing to pay premium prices for guaranteed uptime and proactive issue resolution. Richard Morrison's tone suggested he was beginning to comprehend the magnitude of TechCorp's integration errors. Danette, what would be required to restore Dataflow's previous service capabilities? I'd been preparing for this question since watching David Kim's termination 3 weeks earlier. We need to immediately rehire our terminated technical staff, restore our custom monitoring infrastructure, and rebuild the quality assurance processes that ensure reliable service delivery. Most importantly, we need to recommit to the client-focused philosophy that built Dataflow's reputation. Board member Michael Torres, participating virtually, asked the obvious follow-up question: what's the timeline and cost for implementing these changes? Most of our terminated employees are still available and would probably return if offered appropriate compensation and assurances about long-term job security. The monitoring infrastructure can be restored within 2 weeks if we act immediately. Quality assurance processes would take approximately 1 month to fully implement. William Hartford looked directly at Sarah Chen. Sarah, what's TechCorp's position on reversing integration decisions that are clearly damaging client relationships and threatening revenue stability? Sarah Chen was trapped between corporate loyalty and obvious business necessity. Mr. Hartford, I would need to consult with our integration planning team about the feasibility of implementing significant process reversals. Richard Morrison's voice cut through her diplomatic evasion. Sarah, consulting with planning teams is what created this crisis. I'm authorizing immediate implementation of whatever changes Danette recommends to restore client service capabilities. The reversal was complete. Luka, who'd fired me for supposedly hindering corporate integration, was being escorted from the building by security guards. Sarah Chen, who'd criticized our inefficient client relationships, was now taking orders to restore the exact processes she'd eliminated. TechCorp's corporate leadership was publicly acknowledging that their standardized approaches had nearly destroyed the business they'd purchased for $52 million. But the most satisfying vindication came when Dr. Patricia Williams called me directly to express Austin Regional Hospital's appreciation for preventing what could have been a catastrophic service failure during their evening shift transition. Danette, our staff watched your monitoring dashboard as the crisis developed, and we were amazed by the real-time data available about our system performance, Dr. Williams said. We had no idea that Dataflow provided such comprehensive oversight of our infrastructure. I explained that proactive monitoring and transparent communication had always been fundamental to Dataflow's service philosophy, but recent corporate changes had temporarily reduced these capabilities. Well, we want to ensure that Dataflow maintains these monitoring standards going forward, Dr. Williams continued. In fact, we're interested in expanding our contract to include additional analytics services if you can guarantee the same level of reliability and personal attention we've experienced over the past 6 years. Austin Regional Hospital wanted to expand their contract. The client emergency that Luka had dismissed as a routine technical issue was actually an opportunity to demonstrate Dataflow's unique value proposition and generate additional revenue. Over the following days, similar conversations occurred with other clients who'd witnessed Dataflow's crisis management capabilities. Rather than damaging our reputation, the near-miss system failure had actually showcased our expertise and commitment to client success. 3 other healthcare organizations contacted us about transitioning from competitors whose generic monitoring approaches couldn't provide the reliability assurance that Dataflow's custom systems delivered. The integration crisis that was supposed to eliminate inefficient practices had instead generated new business opportunities worth over $2 million annually. The final irony came when Monica Rodriguez, David Kim, and Janet Foster all accepted offers to return to Dataflow with increased compensation and expanded responsibilities. The employees TechCorp had eliminated as redundant were suddenly essential for rebuilding the capabilities that made Dataflow valuable to clients and acquirers. Luka's termination became official 3 days after the board meeting when TechCorp concluded their internal investigation into his handling of the Austin regional crisis. He'd violated basic corporate protocols by ignoring a client emergency and terminating essential personnel during an active service crisis. Sarah Chen was reassigned to a different TechCorp subsidiary. Her integration expertise apparently better suited to companies that didn't require specialized technical knowledge or mission-critical reliability standards. 6 months later, I sat in Dataflow's expanded conference room overlooking downtown Austin, reviewing quarterly performance reports that exceeded every metric we'd achieved before TechCorp's acquisition. Our client retention rate had recovered to 98%, the highest in company history. Revenue growth was accelerating as healthcare organizations throughout the Southeast sought our specialized monitoring and analytics capabilities. Most remarkably, TechCorp's leadership had formally apologized to Dataflow's board of directors for the integration failures and committed to maintaining our operational independence while providing corporate resources for strategic expansion. Richard Morrison personally acknowledged that standardized corporate processes weren't appropriate for every acquired company, especially those serving specialized markets with unique technical requirements. Danette, your leadership during the crisis convinced our executive team that Dataflow's success comes from capabilities that can't be replicated through generic corporate approaches, Richard explained during our quarterly review call. We're implementing new acquisition protocols that preserve specialized expertise rather than replacing it with standardized processes. The turnaround had been swift but comprehensive. Within 30 days of Luka's termination, we'd restored all monitoring capabilities, rehired, terminated technical staff, and recommitted to the client-focused philosophy that had built Dataflow's reputation. More importantly, we developed new service offerings that leveraged our crisis management expertise to help other organizations improve their own system reliability. Austin Regional Hospital became our showcase client, featuring Dataflow's monitoring capabilities in case studies about healthcare IT infrastructure optimization. Dr. Patricia Williams served as a reference client for prospective customers, describing how our proactive monitoring had prevented a potentially catastrophic system failure during critical patient care operations. Data flows monitoring systems provide visibility and reliability that we simply can't get from larger, more generic technology vendors, Dr. Williams explained during a healthcare IT conference presentation. Their specialized expertise and personal attention to our unique needs makes them an indispensable partner rather than just another service provider. The conference presentation generated inquiries from 17 healthcare organizations seeking similar monitoring and analytics services. Our specialized expertise, which TechCorp had initially viewed as limiting and inefficient, had become our most valuable competitive advantage in an expanding market. But the most profound lesson from this experience wasn't about technical capabilities or client relationships. It was about recognizing my own value and refusing to accept treatment that diminished it. For 8 years, I'd been grateful for opportunities that I'd actually created through my own efforts and expertise. I'd accepted modest compensation for contributions that generated enormous value for others. I'd tolerated criticism from people who fundamentally misunderstood the nature of what made businesses successful. Luka's betrayal had been devastating, but it forced me to discover strengths and resources I'd been taking for granted. When he tried to eliminate me for supposedly hindering corporate progress, I'd accidentally demonstrated that my expertise was actually essential for preventing corporate disasters. The board meeting where Luka fired me became the moment when Dataflow's directors, TechCorp's executives, and I myself finally understood the true scope of my contributions to the company's success. The backend monitoring systems I'd helped design weren't just technical tools. They were the foundation that enabled reliable service delivery to mission-critical clients. The client relationships I'd nurtured weren't inefficient personal connections. They were strategic business assets that generated premium pricing and long-term revenue stability. William Hartford, who'd been elected as Dataflow's new CEO following Luka's termination, offered me the position of Chief Operating Officer with equity participation that reflected my actual contributions to the company's value. For the first time in my career, my compensation aligned with the revenue and client satisfaction I'd generated over 8 years of dedicated work.
Done it! We should have recognized your strategic importance years ago,
Bill acknowledged during my promotion announcement. This crisis taught our board that specialized expertise and client relationships aren't inefficiencies to be eliminated. They're competitive advantages to be protected and enhanced. The new organizational structure eliminated the hierarchical barriers that had prevented direct communication between technical experts and senior leadership. Instead of filtering decisions through management layers that didn't understand our specialized requirements, we created cross-functional teams that included client representatives, technical specialists, and business strategists working collaboratively on complex challenges. Monica Rodriguez became our new Director of Client Success, with authority to implement service improvements without corporate approval processes that delayed problem resolution. David Kim returned as Chief Technology Officer, leading development of next-generation monitoring capabilities that other companies were already seeking to license. Janet Foster accepted the position of Director of Quality Assurance and Compliance, ensuring that our rapid growth maintained the reliability standards that distinguished Dataflow from competitors. The collaborative culture we rebuilt was stronger than our original startup environment because it incorporated lessons learned from both our early success and our recent crisis. We understood now that sustainable growth required preserving the specialized capabilities and client relationships that made growth possible, rather than standardizing away the unique advantages that attracted clients in the first place. 6 months after the board meeting that changed everything, Dataflow employed 127 people across 5 states with client contracts worth over $22 million annually. TechCorp's investment had finally achieved its intended returns, but through restoration of our original business model rather than implementation of their standardized corporate processes. The most satisfying vindication came when Austin Regional Hospital's IT director contacted me about a consulting opportunity with their parent healthcare network, which was seeking to implement Dataflow's monitoring approach across 12 facilities throughout Texas and Oklahoma. The crisis that Luka had dismissed as a routine technical issue had evolved into our largest potential contract worth over $4 million annually. As I reviewed our client satisfaction surveys and financial projections that sunny Austin morning, I realized that the most important lesson from my experience with Luka wasn't about business strategy or technical expertise or client relationships. It was about trusting my own judgment and refusing to accept treatment that denied my worth. For too many years, I'd been grateful for recognition that I'd actually earned through demonstrated results and client success. I'd accepted criticism from leaders who didn't understand the specialized knowledge and relationship building that made our industry successful. I'd tolerated being treated as a middle manager when my contributions had actually been strategic and foundational. Luka's betrayal had been painful, but it forced me to advocate for myself in ways I'd never considered necessary. When he tried to fire me for supposedly hindering corporate integration, I discovered that my expertise was actually essential for preventing corporate failure. When he dismissed my client relationships as inefficient, those relationships became the foundation for rebuilding Dataflow's success on a larger scale. The young software engineer sitting across from my desk interrupted my reflection. Rachel Martinez had recently graduated from University of Texas with a computer science degree and was interviewing for a junior developer position on our monitoring systems team.
Ms. Cross, I've studied Dataflow's reputation in the healthcare IT market, and I'm really impressed by your client retention rates and reliability metrics. I'd love to learn how you've built such strong relationships with technically demanding customers.
Rachel's question demonstrated exactly the kind of respect for experience and curiosity about proven approaches that would make her successful long-term. Unlike the corporate consultants who'd assumed that newer meant better, she understood that sustainable success came from building on foundations of trust, expertise, and mutual value. "Rachel, when can you start?" I asked with a smile.
Right now, if you'll have me.
"Welcome to Dataflow. But remember this, as you build your career, expertise and relationships aren't obstacles to innovation. They're the foundation that makes real innovation possible and sustainable." As Rachel shook my hand enthusiastically, I thought about the lesson I hoped she'd carry forward throughout her professional life. Success comes from building on strengths rather than abandoning them, from enhancing proven approaches rather than replacing them with untested alternatives, and from recognizing that experience and relationships are assets to be valued rather than inefficiencies to be eliminated. Have you ever had a moment when someone underestimated your contributions so completely that it forced you to recognize your own strategic value? I'd love to hear your stories about workplace crises that became opportunities for professional growth and recognition. Sometimes the people who try to diminish our worth actually give us the chance to demonstrate how essential our expertise really is. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming workplace challenges and advocating for your professional worth, and share it with anyone who might need encouragement to trust their own judgment and expertise. Thank you for listening, and I hope you find the confidence to recognize your own value and demand the respect and recognition you've earned through your dedication and results.